Yeah, what's
we
stopping
have no
you? You
barriers.
can do whatever you want.
I can or you can?
What's stopping you?
Hello, welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you are returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for the support. On my channel, I like to give my opinion and perspective on things that are happening today, things that I think actually matter to everyday people, especially those of us trying to raise kids in the insanity known as today's society. I do like to talk about current events and politics, and my perspective does tend to be more on the conservative side of things. Please like this video, leave a comment below, leave your thoughts. I love to have discussions with you guys in the comments. Also, be sure you are subscribed to my channel. Help me to grow this channel to hopefully reach more people that value logic, reason, and sanity. Also, be sure to find me on Rumble under Outspoken Samantha in the event that YouTube decides I have violated their community standards and chooses to kick me off their platform forever. That being said, let's get into today's topic. So recently, Vice put together a panel of women to discuss the state of feminism in America today. And I've seen a lot of different commentators and YouTube influencers pick apart this discussion and offer their perspective on it, but there are some things that I don't think anybody else has touched on, which are the things that I want to talk about today, things that I think are actually really important. So I hope that you'll stick with me through this. Let me know what your thoughts are below, anything that you want to contribute, and yeah, let's get into this. So just a little bit of perspective on Vice. They are not conservative whatsoever. They are not right-leaning in any way. They're not even independent. They are very openly far left in their materials, in their articles and things that they put out there. They have no problem misrepresenting the conservative belief system or what the right wing believes in general. So that being said, I do appreciate that they bring these panels together to hash out these issues from both sides of the aisle, bringing people with very different perspectives on the issues that so many of us are talking about on a daily basis. So I do appreciate them bringing that up and putting this together, but I'm not sure if they put it together with the goal of bringing together people to have civil conversation or simply because they want to exploit the mass ideological division that we have in this country right now for entertainment purposes. I'm personally leaning towards the latter, but either way, I can appreciate when, we do have the opportunity to have people in the same room from so many different backgrounds offering their opinions and their mindset and their belief system and having it put together in a relatively civil way so that we can hear from both sides without too much hostility, even though there was a certain level of hostility in this conversation. But originally I was going to play the whole thing and respond, and have it playing on the screen and break it down and, respond to it periodically. But first of all, I thought that would just make the video way too long. And second of all, I'm still not entirely sure how the copyright things work on YouTube. And I didn't want this video to get flagged for, sharing content that I don't own. So I'm going to do my best. Hopefully, I am complying with all of the YouTube standards in this video and that my video doesn't have any issues once it's posted, but we'll see what happens. So I am going to include a few clips in throughout the video so you can kind of get an idea the tone that was set and the way people were responding to each other, because I do think that that's important. But for the most part, I'm going to do my best just to kind of quote things that were said and just offer my perspective on it. Again, I haven't seen anybody else touch on these particular talking points or the things that were brought up, so that's what I wanted to bring to the conversation. So the premise for the video was to discuss and hash out, as Vice put it, the state of feminism in the US. And it's really important to keep in mind that this was the basis for the conversation. Men versus women. What is the state of feminism? What are the things that women, specifically just women on the basis of being female, face in the US today? Whether there are barriers, whether there are things that hold us back, whether, feminism and oppression really does exist in the US. So first of all, I'm just going to tell you who was on this panel. So this is a group photo of everybody. So from the bottom left to right, and then the top row right to left, so basically going in a circle, first you have Liz Landers, who is the moderator. I don't know anything about her, but in case you do know who she is, this is her. So from the front row, we have Mindy Lind, and she was born without legs, apparently, and she also has a deformation in her right hand. She is extremely liberal. There is Antonia, and I can't pronounce her last name, and I apologize. She is a black woman, but from what I can tell, she seems to be fairly independent in her political views. There are some things that she says throughout the conversation that are more right-leaning, but then she tends to agree with some of the more leftist perspectives. So I'm going to say that I feel like she's kind of more in the middle, maybe slightly to the right. And then there's Layla Gray. She didn't state her nationality, and when I looked her up, I couldn't find whether, what exactly her ethnicity was. I believe she looks slightly Hispanic or has some Hispanic background, but I could be completely wrong, and, I'm not entirely sure. But she's conservative as well. And then there's Yelda Ali, I believe that's her name. Very liberal. From what I can tell, she's from the Middle East somewhere. I want to say Afghanistan, and she's of the Islamic religion. Or at least her parents were. She's a DJ and she's a storyteller as well, and she lives in New York City. In the back row, we have, and I don't know if it's Eli or Ellie, so I'm going to say Eli Ehrlich. She's a liberal transgender woman who was born a biological male, and recently she proudly posted on Twitter or Instagram that if there are children or teens in need of puberty blockers or hormones, that they just needed to message her privately, and she would mail those drugs to them secretly, which I believe is a crime. Then we have Pearl Davis. She's a white conservative woman who has almost 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And I'm really sad that I didn't know who she was before now, but definitely following her at this point. Her and our other conservative friend, Sydney, their responses were awesome. We have Omaris Zamora. She's a black feminist liberal woman with pronouns in her Twitter bio. And then we have Jordan Willow Evans, who is a liberal LGBTQ activist. I'm not sure if she's transgender or not. I have no idea. Just from what I can tell in the video, she seems like she might be, but I have no idea. And then, of course, there's Sydney Watson, who is among my favorite people to follow. She's a white Australian conservative woman who has a very large following on Twitter and YouTube, and she's very entertaining to listen to. So I recommend, just kind of looking up all these people, seeing who they are. But I just wanted to give a perspective on who all of the people were that were contributing to this discussion, all of their backgrounds, and just kind of, to give a basis for where their opinions were coming from. The first question that Liz asks is, in today's polarized world, is feminism dead? Eli kicks off the discussion by saying that feminism is more of an action than an identity. It means uplifting all women, in which case I'd say it's very alive. And I found that very interesting because on its face, that sounds like a really great unifying message, that it's about uplifting all women. But Eli was born a biological male, publicly transitioned at the age of 13, and for the sake of not detracting from this video, because pronouns are not the focus, I will be calling Eli her and she, because that's just not what I want to focus on today. But Eli's statement was interesting because she's saying that she's interested in uplifting all women, but if you spend like 7 seconds on her Twitter profile, it's completely full of left-wing talking points and buzzwords that she uses to attack any woman that disagrees with her. And the lack of self-awareness is astounding, because if people like Eli, and I don't mean transgender people, I mean people who spew talking points consistently as some kind of legitimate belief system, yet constantly contradict every single word they say in their actions. If they actually meant it when they said things like, we need to uplift all women, they would be respectful of all women, including the people that they don't agree with or who challenge their positions. But when she says, we need to uplift all women, she means only women who echo her opinions, who affirm her victimhood, and who ignore the biological facts of her existence. Because Eli really is threatened by the existence of opposition, and the only thing that she knows how to do is to attack others, mostly other women, because she seems to be fighting this inner conflict that we can see happening in real time, and she's hoping that we don't notice that all of her actions directly debunk the words that come out of her mouth. So anyway, that's a long time to spend on just one comment, but I think it's important in understanding where this particular person's perspectives are coming from as they continue to contribute to the conversation. So in response to this question of feminism, what is the state of feminism, by saying that as long as there's power and oppression, there will be people fighting for equity. And when somehow that goes away, or until that somehow that goes away, feminism is alive and well. She doesn't provide any examples of what she means by power and oppression, but she seems to think that just simply saying it is sufficient enough to prove that it exists. And then Pearl, I love this girl. She brings us back to sanity by pointing out that feminism really isn't about true equality, but it's about equality when it benefits women. And it's about women wanting special privileges and treatment at the expense of men, and agrees that, unfortunately, it's alive and well. And then I have to point out that this is Mindy's face the entire time that Pearl is talking. And if you bother to watch the entire video on the Vice channel, you will see that Mindy just happens to be an extremely miserable and bitter woman whose primary source of validation seems to come from when people feel sorry for her. So anyway, and then we have Omaris, and I do apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. She goes on to provide a comment with just a long list of buzzwords. She says, there are different kinds of feminism. That's obvious. Is it though? Is it? As a womanist, as a Black feminist, as someone who's really thinking about human rights, dignity, equity, as long as that need isn't being met, we're still going to keep fighting. And I do have to agree that there are different types of feminism. There is the modern day feminist movement, who Eli, Mindy, and Omaris seem to represent, and Yeldy, or Yelda, and I apologize, I can't remember if it's Yeldy or Yelda, which is one centered on who's the biggest victim and finding every possible way to portray themselves as a victim in order to get special privileges simply for being a woman. They have no problem with workplace quotas that would deny a more qualified man to a particular job and give that job to a less qualified woman just for the sake of meeting quotas. They have no problem denying somebody else an opportunity that they probably deserve more if it means that specific quotas for women are being met, or that they get the job simply for being a woman. They have no problem with that. So one of the biggest demands of feminists, despite the fact that women have completely different work habits. We take on completely different jobs. We don't take on the more physically demanding jobs of society that men do, and statistically do not stay in our careers as long as men do. They think equality is being paid exactly the same as men, despite being less engaged in the workforce. So yes, feminists demand special treatment just for being women. Meanwhile, they also expect more rights for men who call themselves women and shout down every woman who disagrees with that belief system. So this is the kind of mental gymnastics and inconsistency in the feminist movement. And of course, the more buzzwords that you rely on to make your argument, the more it exposes the fact that you don't think the argument that women are oppressed in America is legitimate. So you bring in all of these other factors that have nothing to do with womanhood so that you can create this victim status that doesn't exist if you were to solely focus on the argument of being a woman on its own. So Sydney responds by saying that I find that a lot of feminist ideology and thought today is that it feels more of like a supremacist movement rather than something that is supposed to be advancing the goals of equality. I don't think that we can really term what's going on as feminism because it looks so different than the earlier feminist movement. So in that way, I'd say it's taking its last breaths. And then, of course, Yeldy says, I think America is a little obsessed with themselves, and it's like feminism is always rooted in America, and like white women started it, and it's kind of offensive because for thousands of years, women have been dying for their rights. So I get what she's saying, and I agree that there is probably a particular kind of women that people automatically think of when they hear the word feminist, probably like this. But to me, if you're part of the feminist movement, and it's such a problem that white women are the face of feminism, and you want to change that, first, you actually need to demonstrate that you want the feminist movement to address the real oppression of women. Secondly, if you want the perception of feminism to change, you're the one that has to change it, because nobody has control over the image of the feminist movement more than you do. Which interestingly seems to be another way that they can claim victimhood if they can't dictate what it is that people think of when they hear the word feminism. But, just a couple of suggestions. How about you start by pointing to Afghani women, women and girls who have no rights, like the women in China or North Korea or any number of countries on this earth where women really do not have the rights that you think you don't have in America. Start pointing to real victims of oppression, because y'all didn't seem to care when the US military was yanked out of Afghanistan and the lives of millions of young girls and women changed overnight. One day, they were free to go to school and pursue their dreams and to walk the streets showing their faces, and overnight, they became victims of terrorists, no longer able to go to school, where these young girls who had hopes and dreams of a future were suddenly handed over to terrorists as their wives. And I swear that women that live in these countries have to be laughing and utterly disgusted by the progressive women in America who think they're oppressed. And then feminists like Yeldy can understand why the face of feminism doesn't change. Because when y'all have the chance to put a black or a brown face at the head of the feminist movement and change that perception, the only women that you tend to come up with, that you have come up with, are people like Oprah and Lizzo and Meghan Markle. These women who seem to think they're oppressed victims in the US as they sit in their multi-million-dollar homes with top security and lavish lifestyle. It's a joke. And yes, women from all over the world have been dying for their rights for hundreds of years, but that's where I think the disconnect between liberal progressive feminism and actual feminism that's actually focused on women who don't have rights. That's where the disconnect is. Liberal women in America have this illusion of being oppressed, because if you watch the first 10 minutes of this video, going around to every panelist, these leftist women spend the whole time talking about the horrifying ordeal of being held back as a woman and insist they have to overcome all of these barriers, but not one of them can give a solid example. A lot of talking points, buzzwords, and labels, but not one solid example. Like this.
How is it sexism when we have no barriers today? So we can pick what we want to pick.
Who doesn't have barriers?
Women don't have barriers?
Women, yeah. What's
we
stopping
have no
you? You
barriers.
can do whatever you want.
I can or you can?
What's stopping you?
So it's interesting. I mean, they literally go on and on about insisting that they have these barriers, that they have these things holding them back in America, that women are so oppressed and that, there's power and oppression, and using all of these things and all of these buzzwords. But every single time, and Pearl continues to ask this question, like what? What barriers? What barriers do you face as a woman? And we have Amaris who brings in, as a woman or as a black woman? And Pearl says, well, no, just as a woman. Because obviously there are black men as well. So skin color is not exclusive to being a woman, because you have skin color that varies for women and it varies for men. So you have, black women, you have black men, you have Hispanic women, and you have Hispanic men. So, skin color is not an exclusive trait to women. So you can't bring that in a feminist argument and an argument about womanhood and femininity. And then Mindy does the same thing. She keeps trying to bring in, what are my oppressive barriers that I have to overcome as a woman or as a disabled woman? And Pearl says, let's just stick to the argument of men versus women. And Mindy tries to say, well, part of my feminism, part of my, womanhood is my disability, which is completely ridiculous, because we have disabled men as well. We have disabled people across all age groups, across all, spectrums, across all, socioeconomic status. It doesn't, disability is not exclusive to womanhood. So that has nothing to do with it. And if you want to have a panel, a discussion about the things that are available to people with disabilities, you can do that. You're not going to get opposition from people saying that people with disabilities should be denied anything, but you can have a separate discussion about that. But that's not exclusive to being a woman. So it's crazy to bring that up. But here's the thing about Mindy, and I wanted to bring this up because no one has touched on this. So as I said before, Mindy was born without legs, and from what I can tell, a deformity in her right hand, I believe. So clearly she is going to have some challenges that people born with 4 functional limbs don't have. And I get that. I'm not minimizing her life experiences or the things that she has had to overcome based on, what she was born with and what she's got to deal with. But there are a lot of things that Mindy has conveniently left out of this discussion that if she were to talk about them, her own personal experiences would blow this victimhood narrative completely to smithereens. It would blow it out of the water and debunk the whole thing. So I found this article about Mindy Lind in an arts and culture magazine that's out of Seattle. And I'll just read parts of it and just kind of give you the gist of it. I'll link it in the description box if you want to go look at it. But it just says, from a cloud of mist she arrives, with a whoosh she arrives. On the back of an eagle or with 2 flanking her, she arrives. Superhero singer-songwriter Mindy Lind knows how to make an entrance. When Lindy was a year old, a Swedish Southern Baptist family named the Lindstroms adopted her. She moved often with her new family, from Florida to Virginia to Missouri and Georgia. With a group of her 15 brothers and sisters in tow, she would go out into the southern summer heat and pop tar bubbles in the street for fun. Lindy was born without legs, though she remains as mobile as any person or hero, getting around via skateboard, wheelchair, or by superhero wing. As a girl, I'm so sorry, she gained an appreciation for music, and her newfound musical ability came in handy in the bands where she played French horn and in gospel choirs where she sang and played the piano. She went to church on Sundays and Wednesdays, though her ideas of God were put aside, she says, when she discovered her passion for boys and smoking pot. Lindy arrived in Seattle at age 23 after graduating from college at the University of West Georgia, and where she studied psychology and philosophy. She chose the Emerald City, she says, because it was the furthest from Georgia and because of its mountainous and serene water views. She integrated herself in the local music scene after performing at the famed open mic at Cafe Racer. She'd found the place when looking for a good breakfast during her shifts across the street at a listening therapy center. Her voice, much like her physical form, floats, soars, and dances mid-air. She has performed as an opening act for Ben Folds and HBO's Girls creator Lena Dunham. Lind is also an outspoken advocate of crip culture, known as disability culture, and her writing, which features personal heroes such as disability advocate John Hockenberry, has appeared in The Stranger. Lind can be found around Seattle performing at Cafe Racer, the Tractor Tavern, the Moore Theater, and other venues. Look for her whenever the fog is rolling in or whenever the birds are singing mightily. So there are numerous other articles about Mindy, awards she's won, things that she's accomplished, venues that she's played at. She is a sought-after musician. And, I went out of my way to dig up her music, to listen to it, and I have to admit, the music I imagine coming out of a bitter, liberal white woman in my head sounds something to the, similar to a cat being dragged through a swamp. But shockingly, I was really surprised to enjoy it. I have also played the piano my entire life, almost, and I have been singing my entire life. My whole family is musical, so I am really picky when it comes to music, but I actually really enjoyed her music. I thought she was very talented, and I can see why people want to listen to her. So, she has this incredible talent that she has used, and she's been able to pursue, not only in a way that is just beyond what a lot of other people have accomplished, but she clearly hasn't let anything hold her back from her dreams and what she has wanted to achieve. And, she's also managed to develop almost expert skills on a skateboard to get around. She has used her creativity to come up with ways to make herself, to keep herself from being held back. And she has no problem when she gets up to a piano bench, swinging herself up onto that bench and playing like a pro. So clearly, like, she has overcome her challenges. She has decided that she is not going to let her challenges hold her back. And she truly has this story of being the total opposite of being oppressed, the total opposite of being a victim. She has lived her life in a way that says, I'm not a victim. And she has this story that could be so incredibly valuable to other people who need to hear that they're not victims and that they are just as valuable and have just as much to offer the world as anybody else. Mindy could be out there uplifting women, uplifting anyone and everyone, and inspiring others. She clearly has an immeasurable amount of strength and determination, and she's pursued exactly what she wanted to do in life, and she hasn't allowed anything to hold her back. So she's not a victim. She hasn't hid in the shadows or been ashamed of what makes her different, and clearly doesn't see herself as less than anyone else. And that's not to say that every aspect of her life has been easy or that she hasn't had times where she's struggled to deal with her challenges. Nobody's perfect. And even if someone appears to the rest of the world like they're just this constant ball of inspiration and that it's just been so easy for them, of course, you are going to have hard days and hard weeks and times when you really just are so tired of dealing with the things that you have to face. So I'm not saying that it's been a perfect ride for her, but it's absolutely astonishing to me and incredibly tragic that the message she feels is most valuable and the cause that she wants to get behind is victimhood and oppression, when everything else that she personally has done in her life shows exactly the opposite. And the other liberal women on this panel do exactly the same thing. When asked, what barriers do you have as a woman? They can't answer that. And I love that Pearl asks, well, what's holding you back? What can't you do? And Mindy says, well, what can't I do? Or what can't you do? And it's like, what is holding you back? Because clearly Mindy can do anything, but she finds more pride in being a victim. And clearly Antonia knows that she can do anything. And she's Black, so why does Amaris, a Black woman in the same room, living in the same country, have a completely opposite perspective? And I'm sure that Antonia isn't living life by a different set of laws or wouldn't recognize oppression if she were facing it. It's because the difference isn't the number of challenges that these women face, because everyone has them. Everyone has to deal with trials in their lives. The difference is their mindset. You know, though Mindy has this very liberal mindset, she enjoys living a life that conservatives constantly talk about, minus the abortion discussion, which I'm not going to get into today because to me, abortion just deserves a whole other video and discussion. But it's just absolutely mind-blowing to me because it really is about your mindset. It really is about whether or not your challenges and your trials define you, because everybody has them. Some of them are physical, some of them are mental, some of them are financial, and you go through life and sometimes you experience challenges in different areas. But the difference is whether or not you think that your value lies in how many victimhood check marks that you can apply to your list, or how many challenges that you have overcome and how and why. Because, you know, everybody, like I said, everybody has challenges and struggles in their life, and people, you think that you would be able to look at me and know what my challenges in life have been because I am a white conservative woman, when truly you have absolutely no idea what my challenges in life have been, because I don't walk around talking about all of the struggles that I faced and that I need you to treat me differently and give me special privileges and acknowledge those challenges, because that is not what I want about myself to be acknowledged. That's not what I want people to be talking about when they refer to me. I want people to be talking about, you know, to be recognizing, well, even then, I don't need people's praise, but if people were to think of me, you know, in some way, I don't want them to be thinking about all the things that that have dragged me down in my life. I want them to recognize, you know, hopefully I am setting an example of overcoming challenges. That is what I would prefer people to recognize about me, if they were to think about me at all. So those were the biggest things that I kind of wanted to touch on in this video, but I do think that there are a few honorable mentions that we need to just briefly touch on really quick. Liz asked the question, do trans women who are biological males belong in women's spaces? And Mindy, you know, is the first one to jump in and say, well, of course they do. Trans women are women. What's the question? And Pearl jumps in and says this.
I want to come at this from the position of an athlete.
Oh, Jesus.
So I play semi-pro basketball, semi-pro volleyball. So when it comes to like athletic spaces, I don't think that trans women should be allowed into athletic spaces because I don't think it's a fair. I think as female athletes, we work so incredibly hard for the little opportunity there is in women's sports.
Would this be a barrier for you?
There's no barrier. There's less opportunity in some industries.
That's what a barrier is.
There's less. It's not. No. It's
That's
based
what
on the
friction
market.
means.
Okay.
Hold on, guys.
Okay. So again, we work very hard for the little opportunity there is in the space because we're not as entertaining as the men. Sorry, we're just not. And so it's like you're going to take the little opportunity that we're given, and the problem is like we can't compete. We can't. Like, I'm 6 foot. If I go up against a 6 foot guy and I play basketball with him, he's going to body me.
And what happens
Now, what's absolutely astonishing to me about this is that Mindy legitimately thinks that her being disabled is more relevant to the men versus women conversation than Pearl's experience in women's athletics in the men versus women debate, where the differences between men and women couldn't be more important. Pearl goes on to talk about how she played semi-pro sports and that despite the fact that she is a 6 foot tall female and she has all of this experience in these sports, if she were to play against a man of the same height and the same weight and the same experience, he would win, hands down. But then Mindy pipes in with this sarcastic comment like, why don't you try confidence? And Pearl says, well, confidence isn't going to change my muscle mass, my bone density, or my speed to match that of a male. And I'd like to point out, confidence wouldn't change Pearl's body composition any more than confidence would grow legs for Mindy. So not only is that comment completely idiotic, it's almost amusing that the person it came from was Mindy, who has this vested interest in something like confidence being able to change someone's body or abilities. And then Sydney jumps in because Pearl's experiences are being talked down, and this happens.
Getting personal. I don't want it to be personal.
A lot of us live in this space where we're told that our opinions don't count because they're not the right kind of opinions, and we're constantly shouted over and talked over regardless of what we look like because there's one group in society that basically takes precedence, and it's frustrating. So yeah, of course, it's frustrating because when we try to talk about it, we get shouted down, we get told to be quiet, we get spoken down too as well. So there's hostility there for plenty of women.
Let's try to make this an opportunity to speak.
You're literally a white woman from Australia. You live in a bubble and you're pissed that voices that have been silenced forever finally can be heard.
So again, where Eli was talking about how feminism is about uplifting all women and it's this action that you take, we have a woman who is expressing very real concerns about the threat of to women's sports as biological women who has to deal as biological women who do have to deal with the consequences of the policies promoted by these feminists. The second that a woman, an actual woman born as a woman, says that they disagree with that, we have this sociopathic woman going out of her way to fake laugh so loud that she drowns this other woman out because she disagrees with her. And then every one of these so-called feminists who are apparently so interested in elevating women tell her essentially to shut up, that her opinion doesn't matter, that she needs to be quiet. And one final thought, I am honestly so disappointed that none of the conservative women challenged these leftist lunatics with this one question. What is a woman? Because the very same people, Mindy, Eli, Yeldy, Omaris, who say that they advocate for women's rights, think so little of femininity and womanhood that asking them to define what a woman is offensive to them. They won't even tell you what a woman is, and if you try to define it as what a woman actually is, they find that oppressive and offensive. Anyway, final thoughts. There's no value in victimhood. There's nothing rewarding about it, and it's an absolute farce. And the feminist movement, a movement that claims to want to uplift women so badly, are the greatest perpetrators of victimhood. They don't see women as powerful or as able to overcome. Feminists see women as being weak, that we need special rules and quotas, and that we need society to smooth the path out for us because they think women are too weak to accomplish things without that special attention. Because as it stands now, there are no rights that men have that we don't have. There are no laws that are written one way for men and another way for women. There is no one trying to tell women that they don't have as much value as men do. Except, of course, feminists. Feminists are saying that. Let me know what your thoughts are. I will be breaking down, I might break down other parts of this video. I haven't decided yet. I have watched this panel far more times than I intended to. So let me know if you are interested in me breaking down other parts of it. Please, if you can handle it, if you can stomach it, go watch the whole thing on Vice. It was very interesting. I really appreciated Sydney and Pearl's contributions to it for bringing some sanity to it. Layla had some really great comments as well. She was just a little more quiet through the whole thing. So, which I understand. If I were to participate in this particular panel, I am not sure if I would hold back and be quiet just for the sake of my head not exploding, or if I would be able to express my opinions the way that Sydney and Pearl did without getting overly heated and really being able to productively contribute to it in a positive way. So let me know what your thoughts are, if you'd like to see more insight into the rest of it, or if we should just leave it alone. But please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know every time I post a video. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.